Hi, this is Steve Cochran, and it was an honor to spend Election Day at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. Now, Election Day was not a huge deal in Illinois this year, but it's a huge deal every year. And I thought, if I'm going to go to the museum, and my friend Joe Crane from the museum has been asking me to come down for a while, I said, yeah, why not Election Day? So on November 2nd, we did the podcast live from my office, from the museum, and the State of Sound exhibit. A lot more on that coming up. And by the way, that's only up through January 23rd, so you need to get there to see that. And we had a great time. And we being me, Pat Brady, and a slew of guests, which we'll get to. We split this up into two shows. Today, you're going to hear part one next Wednesday on the, what would that be? Next Wednesday would be the 17th? Yeah, the 17th. You will hear part two. And spending time on Election Day at the Lincoln Museum was cool. Even though Election Day wasn't a big deal this year in Illinois, it's always a big deal. So from Election Day to Veterans Day, certainly with the Civil War and Veterans of War, I think about Veterans Day, my own dad from World War II. Everybody hearing this, you've got somebody you love who has some connection to the armed services. Obviously, we thank you for your service. We remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. We thank them, we pray for them, and we pray for their family and their loved ones. God bless you all, and God bless America. But this is live from my office, LFMO, at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. So as the kids would say, it's LFMO at ALPLM. I'm being told the kids wouldn't say that. I want to thank Joe Crane. I want to thank Christian McWhorter, the Lincoln historian, just a great guest. He is actually on this part one episode. And of course, I want to thank David Hochberg, Team Hochberg and David Hochberg, title sponsors of Live from My Office. I'm not positive about this, but I think there's a chance that David Hochberg financed Lincoln's first cabin. I mean, I'm just assuming. He does all the big ones. So let's do this. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to get things started live from the Lincoln Museum. Well, live kind of, as previously recorded. And I'm glad you're here. Thanks for listening to Live from My Office. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance the one that you're in, you need to do what I did, what my family has done, and what many of you do every day. You call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Tom, retired, Social Security income of $30,000 a year and over $2 million in retirement assets, contacted 3 banks to refinance and purchase another home in Florida, and they all told Tom he didn't qualify. So he called Team Hochberg and got a free consultation. Team Hochberg helped Tom refinance his Illinois home and helped him purchase a home in Florida using something called an asset depletion loan. Now, you don't have to know what that is. You just have to know to call Team Hochberg. That's their area of expertise. So let's review. Before calling Team Hochberg, Tom was told by 3 banks, you can't refinance, you can't buy a new house. He called Team Hochberg, and Tom had his rate lowered, his monthly payment refinancing for his current home, and he purchased a new home. Team Hochberg helped thousands of my podcast listeners in the last year, and they can certainly help you too. Whether you want to use your retirement assets to refinance and purchase new homes or anything related to the money that revolves around and in and out of your house, you need Team Hochberg. Let them help you like they helped Tom. But they can't help if you don't call 855-56-DAVID. or 56david.com. And a reminder to tune into Home Sweet Home Chicago, hosted by David, Saturday mornings on AM 720, WGN from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. A reminder, too, Homeside Financial is an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. Back on Live from My Office. Before we continue, I wanted to sprinkle in a little bit of one of my favorite movies, the award-winning Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. And we're going to drop a few scenes in on these 2 parts of the Lincoln Museum episode of this podcast. This first one is great. It frankly was the thing that was pounded into our brains most when the movie first came out. And since so much of Lincoln's historic achievements in his one term plus, 1 week, was the 13th Amendment. This is Lincoln and his team of rivals. The clip is called Now. Listen.
Today or
state by state, you can extricate.
I can't listen to this anymore. I can't accomplish a goddamn thing of any human meaning or worth until we cure ourselves of slavery and end this pestilential war. And whether any of you or anyone else knows it, I know I need this. This amendment is that cure. We're stepped out upon the world stage now, with the fate of human dignity in our hands. Blood's been spilt to afford us this moment. Now. And you grousel and heckle and dodge about like pettifogging Tammany Hall hucksters. See what is before you. See the here and now. That's the hardest thing. The only thing that accounts. Abolishing slavery by constitutional provision settles the fate for all coming time. Not only of the millions now in bondage, but of unborn millions to come. 2 votes stand in its way. These votes must be procured.
We need 2 yeses, 3 abstentions, 4 yeses and 1 more abstention, and the amendment will pass.
You got a night and a day and a night and several perfectly good hours. Now get the hell out of here and get them.
Yes. But how?
Buzzard's guts, man. I am the President of the United States of America, clothed in immense power. You will procure me these votes.
This is live from my office, and we've taken live from my office on the road. We are live from the Lincoln Museum in historic Springfield, Illinois. I got a voice you're going to remember and recognize for a long time. He's very elderly now, but he still gets around, and we're always encouraged and inspired to see Pat Brady. Hello, buddy.
Hey, this is quite an honor to be here at the Lincoln Museum. It's quite something.
You know, what's cool about it is historic Springfield has a million things that people should see and experience, especially if you're a history buff. But when are they putting the statue up to you? Because you work here a lot.
Yeah, I don't think that's coming for a while.
No Brady statue?
I don't think so. But it is good to see the kids and everybody back here.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great... I don't know if you got back to the archives, but I've been through here before, and it's really a gem for the state of Illinois, so we're glad to have it. Glad to be here.
I spent some time here yesterday walking around the museum and stuff, and that brings us to the reason we're here, and that's longtime big shot television superstar and broadcast brother Joe Crane, who has got a nice civilian job now where he works his fanny off, making sure that everything is up to snuff for the public when they get here and enjoy it. Joe Crane is, I believe I have this right, you are the Director of Public Events and Community Engagement?
Yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell kind of what I do. So anytime we have a special event or program guest to come to the museum, such as yourself, I work with those folks to facilitate the event and pull it off, all the logistics, and of course do a lot of the community outreach and engagement within not only the Springfield community, but around Central Illinois and across the state.
And of course, I would say this to you because you were a disc jockey, a program director, and a television guy for all those years. You should be embarrassed at that title. That title's far too important.
As my dad says, that and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee.
There you go. 2 minutes on the museum that makes you as proud as you should be. Tell people.
Well, the fact that this is a world-class facility that combines rigorous scholarship and incredible modern showmanship with the technology that we have at the museum to tell the story story of America's greatest president, Abraham Lincoln, and it all comes together in a very compelling way that, we're now 17 years in the making as a museum. And at the time that the museum opened up, it was a forerunner of what a lot of museums are now doing with a lot of interactive, a lot of multimedia presentations. As you saw yesterday, the example of you going through the TV studio where you see a video of Tim Russert breaking down the 1860 election in a very modern storytelling way.
Pat, have you seen that?
Yes.
The Russert.
I have not. Did he do it yet? Did he have the whiteboard?
He didn't pull the whiteboard, which would have been even better, but he was sitting, as you told me the story yesterday, in the Meet the Press studios, did it in one take because that's Russert, and he broke down the 4 candidates, and they actually shot what would have been commercials if TV existed then. It's really well done.
Yeah, to explain each candidate's platform and how the election was shaking out and all that. So it's a very, and that's just so typical of what you see around the museum. You see the history combined with modern day storytelling to present the story in a very compelling way to our patrons. And then the other aspect that we have is we inherited the former Illinois State Historic Library that's part of our library camp building across the street on the campus. And we have a collection that Illinois has amassed going back to the 1880s, 1890s. So our other mission is to tell the story of Illinois history, and we do it in the gallery that we're in right now, the Illinois Gallery, which is our temporary exhibit space. And within this space, we rotate new exhibits in and out every year. And this year's exhibit is all about Illinois music, called State of Sound, A World of Music from Illinois.
Yeah, we're going to get into this in greater detail. My friend Dave Hoekstra wrote the words in the book for the exhibit, and occasionally does a podcast out of the studio that we're in, who's a fabulous guy. And I've mentioned this to everybody, but I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland several times. You walk into this exhibit, it has that kind of feel. You feel like you're backstage, and then you can pop around genre to genre, and you guys didn't miss a trick. I mean, it's definitely a draw. I know it's up through January, or at least into January, so people need to get down here.
Yeah, it's just a very, again, a compelling exhibit that combines so much technology with the video listening stations that we have throughout the exhibit, and a wonderful collection of instruments, memorabilia, and other items from the artists and their families that make the exhibit come to life. We see everything from, John Prine's tchotchkes that he would have out on stage with him to help with his anxiety. You see guitars from Styx and Cheap Trick, a horn from Chicago, Miles Davis's trumpet, so many other items that really personalize these artists and their stories. And of course, you'll hear more about that with a visit with Lance Tauser, our exhibits director, and the phenomenal job he and his team have done putting this exhibit together that runs through January 22nd of 2022.
The website is terrific, and it'll take you through planning your visit here, which can be done really in 2 pretty simple stages. You lay it out well. So I would encourage people to go to the website, and I would just encourage you to get here. It'd be a great trip for the holidays and all that. But anyway, thank you for having us.
Yes. PresidentLincoln.illinois.gov is where you go to plan your trip. Okay. And, of course, the exhibit has its special website, www.musicfromillinois.com, and that's where you'll see changing artifacts on the web page, as well as links to our podcast series with various artists, as well as our Spotify playlist that's all Illinois music.
Yeah, it's very cool. You'd be amazed at how much music came out of Illinois and from Illinois. And again, as disc jockeys, I didn't know all of it. I assume you didn't either.
No, it amazes me as many years as I was on the radio playing all these records, I didn't realize some of the artists had such a connection to the land of Lincoln. And of course, we know the easy ones like REO and Cheap Trick and Styx and Chicago, but it's amazing how many other artists either born in Illinois or have their starts in not only the Chicago area, but all across the state.
You've got some kids lingering outside. We're live on tape. And I'm Pat, from being on live with me for all that time. We used to have people come up to the window on Michigan Avenue and things. This is as close as it gets. So, Joe, I'm going to ask you to open the door and ask those kids where they're from.
Okay.
So I can give their group or their school a plug. And
I think I saw Taylorville.
Was it Taylorville? Where are your kids from? Yeah. So Joe is finding that out. And then, Pat, I have a gift presentation for you.
Yeah, Taylorville is just down the road from us.
So is the school group from Taylorville. Taylorville, let me hear you. Yeah, there you go.
These kids don't do the same hand gestures we used to see on Michigan Avenue.
Yeah, that was totally different. That was a different breed of tourists.
They all thought we were number one.
Thank you, Joe. Joe Crane, a great host.
Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you here. We've been wanting to come down for a while, and we're glad we could finally all get together and make it happen.
I appreciate it.
Now, you just have to come back when the weather's warmer. We get you out to one of the golf courses.
Oh, twist my arm. Twist my arm. Going to meet Amy Beadle in just a second. But, Pat, I wanted to give you a gift because you come down here for work so often. I keep referring to down here because you and I live in Chicago. Not together. You're in Springfield more than half your time, right?
Yes.
So we can talk a little bit about that coming up. But I know one particular president, and it's not Lincoln, but one particular president meant an awful lot to you. And I believe that he probably exemplified the party of Lincoln as much as any other because I share your fandom of him. So if you could open this, I don't want you to think I was just cleaning out my closet and I found these.
I'm sure this is in your trunk.
I bought these. So, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. So go ahead and open that. I wrapped it myself in that bag. And tell people what you got.
Oh, my gosh.
It's the complete Ronald Reagan VHS collection.
Oh, my God.
That's right. Ronald Reagan, the great speeches.
Another great Illinois resident.
Exactly, from Dixon,
the
right? second
second best president in the history of the country, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the Reagan VCR tapes, I'm guessing you don't own a VCR anymore?
Oh, I'm sure. I've still got an 8-track. In my 75 Monte Carlo.
I was so pleased when I was cleaning. Okay, when my wife was cleaning, I was so pleased that she said, "Can you get rid of these?" And I said, "Yes, I can, because I'd love to see them, but we don't own a VCR, but I know somebody that would love to have them."
That picture, though.
It's a handsome fellow.
Handsome fella, smiling, thinking good thoughts.
Yep.
Very good. Well, Steve, that's heartfelt. It's not as nice as the things I give you over on the air for your birthdays but you're older than me, so I was always
2 weeks older. That's exactly right. I'm 2 weeks older. Yes. Let me say hi to Amy Beadle, who's here, the boss at the Convention Visitors Bureau. Can I call you the boss?
You can. I'm not, but you can certainly call me that.
Say hi to Pat Brady.
I kind of like to be the queen.
The queen. Queen Beadle.
Queen Beadle.
Yeah,
it has a ring to it.
I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard that phrase.
Actually, it is.
Oh, well, please run with it.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Say hi to my friend Pat Brady.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Pat. How are you?
Living the dream here with Steve Cochran.
Yeah, exactly. We're very blessed.
And as we think about plans for 2022 or even the holiday season, part of your job is to make sure that people not only experience the amazing museum and library, the Lincoln Museum and Library, but they also know where to go in Greater Springfield. So plug your town a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, we, as you've probably experienced some here, have an amazing town, and the museum here is a big part of that.
Sure.
Obviously, having a world-class presidential museum is a huge asset to Springfield, but Springfield has so much to offer. So we are Lincoln's hometown. We have the only home he ever owned. We have the tomb. We have the old state capitol, the new state capitol, this beautiful museum. But beyond that, we have even a Frank Lloyd Wright home, the Dana Thomas House, which is a great architecture. Yeah, a lot of people don't. So we do have that beautiful site as well. But when you talk about the holidays, we're hoping to see a lot of people in Springfield this fall for our holiday walks. So we have a downtown event called Holiday Walks, Old Capitol Holiday Walks, and that is every Wednesday and Saturday. It'll start November 27th and run through December 22nd. And the downtown is just vibrant with Christmas trees in the windows, shops and vendors just all in the holiday spirit. You might even see Abe and Mary wandering around.
Sure.
We're going to have an ice rink on the old state capitol lawn, so outdoor ice skating right there on that historic site. So we're very excited about that. And here at the museum, they're going to be hosting the gingerbread house exhibit. So you can come by and see a bunch of fabulous gingerbread homes.
Pat.
What's the most well attended of all those things you just mentioned? People still go out to the tomb and rub the nose and do the whole thing?
Absolutely. The tomb is one of our larger site attendance for sure.
Can you explain the rub the nose to me?
Yeah, it's said that if you rub Lincoln's nose, it will bring you good luck. So when you go out there, now there's some controversy with it because some people feel it's defacing, a historic monument.
Oh, he would have laughed about that one.
I think he would enjoy the fact that he has a shiny nose. But yeah, so it's kind of a lore that people to this day love to do. We have tons and tons of visitor pictures that are shared with us of people out rubbing the nose at Lincoln's tomb for good luck.
Just going out to that tomb, though, I grew up in Bloomington, so we were down here a lot. But to be that close to Lincoln and the whole historical, it really is a great thing to do.
It has a bit of a feel to it that you really need to experience, because if you just stop and take in what you're viewing and what you're a part of there.
Who is there?
Yeah. Yes. And the Oak Ridge Cemetery, just in general, the Department of Natural Resources, they operate Lincoln's Tomb, the old state capitol, and the Dana Thomas House. And this past spring, they developed a walk, hike, and bike history tours, which were just fascinating. And those go through November 15th as well, so there's still time to come down and take part in them. But several of them happen out at the cemetery. So they're cemetery walks led by a guided DNR expert who can tell you all about military history out there, Black history out at the cemetery, the 1908 race riots. There's some bike tours around the historic sites.
It's rolling out there. It's not flat. It's really
It's
pretty.
like you went to, Southern Illinois or out of state.
I was going to say, did you have the hills installed?
No, it's really it's very rolling.
Gorgeous. Yes. So I would highly encourage for people to come out and take advantage of those tours either yet this fall, or they'll be ramping them back up in the spring. So, and one other thing I wanted to mention to you, because there's so much here in Springfield that we're almost, it's a blessing and a curse when people say, what can I do in Springfield? And so we developed our Explorer Passport, which you all can see here in person, but it's basically 20 sites, attractions, and restaurants all in one little handy flip guide. Half of it is sites and attractions, so it's kind of the top 12 things that you don't want to miss when you come to Springfield. And then when you flip it over, it's 8 of our living legends of Route 66, because that's another huge part of Springfield is that we're on Route 66.
Right.
And we're preparing and excited for the 2026 100-year anniversary of Route 66.
Oh, that's right.
Which is going to be amazing.
And I've driven a ton of old 66, even in the western part of the United States, just to do it, and it's super cool. I mean, you can do it out of Springfield going up to Chicago. You can catch
it comes
a lot
out of Chicago down to here and then down into Missouri. But this is our own little collection of 8 of our local legends who have things to see and do that relate to Route 66 while you're here. So we love to use this as our little guide for your 2 to 3 to 4 day stay. This is 20 different things that you can take advantage of in this one little handy pocketbook. So
I'll let you go on this, but we see school kids here, which, as Pat mentioned, which is fabulous to have school kids be able to experience the Lincoln Museum again. But as kids get a little older, we're not teaching history the same way in school as we were. And you may get a little pushback from your kids. I don't want to go to a museum. There's plenty of things for the family to do. I see the looks on the kids' faces when they come in. Once they're in, you got them.
Absolutely.
But there's other kid stuff in town as well, right?
Absolutely. We have the Illinois State Museum here in Springfield, which is the history of the state of Illinois, and it's very interactive and engaging, and it's family friendly. It's great for kids and adults. And then we also have the Kidseum, which is our kids museum. And again, even as an adult, you're going in there and you kind of go in at first, kind of looking around, and then all of a sudden you find yourself playing with everything and being interested in that. And so a lot of good things for kids there. We also in the summer months have Knights Action Park, so we do have a water park, and it has a dry land side as well with go-karts and miniature golf and batting cages and all of that. So really just about something for everyone, and we would love to see everyone come for a few days and enjoy Springfield.
You can take the train too. Right downtown.
Absolutely. It comes right in on Washington Street downtown, just a couple blocks from 3 of our major hotels that we have here. And speaking of hotels, we're real thankful to our partners over at the Drury, Drury Inn and Suites, for accommodating you all this week.
Yes, very nice people, and I'll pay for any damage.
Oh, good. Okay.
I kind of got caught
like
up
a bad
in the
rock
state
and
of
roll
sound exhibit, and I wanted to trash my room, but I didn't. I want you to know that.
Okay, well, good. I'm sure I'll be hearing about it if you did.
Oh, no. It's Queen Beetle, Amy Beetle. What is your official title?
I'm the sales and marketing manager for the Springfield Convention and Visitors.
Well, you're a great spokesperson for Springfield.
Thank you.
Nice to see you here.
You as well.
As we continue live from the Lincoln Museum on Live from My Office. You're looking to purchase a new home or refinance it when you're in? Do what we all do. We call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Who are the we in we all? It's everybody I've worked with. It's my family. It's people who ask me for advice, and I tell them Team Hochberg is not only legit, they're the best in the business. That's not a recommendation you can get wrong, by the way. If you tell somebody, hey, that mortgage you're doing, the biggest financial transaction of your life, here's somebody you ought to use. and then they turn out to be, I don't know, a shyster? Oh, you don't want a shyster. Then you are going to be on their blacklist forever. I have no problem recommending Team Hochberg. I have and I will. And after hearing thousands of Team Hochberg ads, Jody called for a free consultation. She's happy she did. Team Hochberg helped Dan and Jody secure a cash-out refinance, pay off most of their credit cards, and save over $2,700 a month. That's a lot of money. So before calling, Dan and Jody were overwhelmed and stressed out after David Hochberg eliminated over 70 grand of debt and saved them over $30,000 a year. Team Hochberg helped me and thousands of my podcast listeners use their homes and their home's equity to eliminate debt. They helped Dan and Jody, but look, they can't help you if you don't call. And if you think, well, Steve, you didn't really talk about my issue. Anything involving the financing, the refinancing, the money in your home, well, you need to pick up the phone because Hochberg has an expert that can help, or he'll do it himself. All he wants to do is save you a little money, like Dan and Jody. Can't help you if you don't call. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com, 855-563-2843, or 56david.com for Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. The official Lincoln historian for the Lincoln Museum is Christian McWhorter. He's a great guest. I love talking to him. And you'll hear him here in just a second. But first, another scene from Spielberg's Lincoln. Lincoln loved to tell jokes, loved to tell stories. Here's his famous Ethan Allen joke.
It was right after the Revolution, right after peace had been concluded. And Ethan Allen went to London to help our new country conduct its business with the king. The English sneered at how rough we are and rude and simple-minded and on like that everywhere he went, until one day he was invited to the townhouse of a great English lord. Dinner was served, and beverages imbibed. Time passed, as happens, and Mr. Allen found he needed the privy. He was grateful to be directed thence. Relieved, you might say. Now, Mr. Allen discovered on entering the water closet that the only decoration therein was a portrait of George Washington. Ethan Allen done what he came to do and returned to the drawing room. His host and the others were disappointed when he didn't mention Washington's portrait, and finally his lordship couldn't resist and asked Mr. Allen had he noticed it, the picture of Washington he had. Well, what did he think of its placement? Did it seem appropriately located to Mr. Allen? Mr. Allen said it did. His host was astounded. Appropriate? George Washington's likeness in a water closet? Yes, said Mr. Allen, where it'll do good service. The whole world knows nothing to make an Englishman shit quicker than the sight of George Washington. I love that story.
Live from my office, Steve Cochran with Pat Brady, and we continue from the Lincoln Museum. I should say, to the library is right across the street. When you make a trip here, you need to do both. We're going to talk about the state of sound, a world of music from Illinois coming up. But right now, happy to say hello to Christian McWhorter, the Lincoln historian for the Lincoln Museum. How do you get the job?
Well, I don't know.
Is your dad a precinct captain?
No, I'm Chicago, Pat.
Oh, sorry, we're not in Chicago anymore.
That's different.
I am not from Illinois.
Okay,
so you can scratch that off. No, I worked. We have a project here called the Papers Abraham Lincoln Project, and I worked for them for 6.5 years and worked my way into the research division, and now I'm lucky enough to be the Lincoln historian here. It's a cool job.
It is a cool job, and you're a young guy, and but I think we all need to remember that history is older than every historian, thus the job. So, did you have a particular interest in Lincoln?
Yeah, I went to grad school. I have a PhD in U.S. history, and I was specialized in the Civil War. So I went to grad school to become a Civil War historian, which whenever I say it sounds like a ridiculous thing. I'm glad it all worked out for me, but that seemed like an insane thing to do at the time. But anyway, and I specialized in the Civil War. I wrote a book on music during the Civil War, and then ended up in the orbit of this place. And yeah, that's how I ended up being a Lincoln person.
Well, you must be fascinated by the exhibit we're sitting in then with your music background, the State of Sound.
Yeah, very much. This was a cool exhibit for us to put on here, and it was fun. I got to work with the folks putting it up a little bit, and Illinois has got a fascinating musical history. So
we were talking. It's kind of reverse order here, but we were talking before the microphones were on about a piece of Lincoln history which I don't think most people understand. Tell the grave robber story.
Yeah, you're right. This has nothing to do with music. I wish I could tie it to music somehow. Maybe I'll figure it out.
Don't worry about segues. They're not.
So in 1876, which had the election day in 1876, which was the highest voter turnout among people who could vote in American history, 3 guys tried to steal Lincoln's body from his tomb. One of them is on the inside for the Secret Service, which was the Secret Service's job at the time was to stop counterfeiters and Pinkerton agents who were detectives. They were going to steal his body to get some extreme, I can't remember the number, but some ridiculous amount of money for 1876, and to ransom a Chicago $5 counterfeiter out of jail.
So people need to understand it, and it's all in context. But these were stupid criminals, and they wanted their revenue stream back. They wanted their counterfeiter back. He was in jail in Michigan, maybe?
I don't remember where he's in jail. There's a whole book on this called Stealing Lincoln's Body. Yeah.
So the idea is we steal Lincoln's body, we bury it in some dirt, we then ransom it, and we wait for our check to come in. We wait for the cash to be delivered on the pony, whatever the case may be. But the agent who is the inside guy exposes them right as they get the door open.
They get inside, and I want to you underplayed how elaborate the plan is, because they've got these people lined up throughout Illinois, who they're going to hand the body off of. They have like a network of guys set up in like barns, and they're going to.
So they did have a plan,
and they're going to take the body all the way to Lake Michigan and bury it in a sand dune. Yeah, so you got to get that detail.
Yeah, you know what? Again, I'm going back to they were idiots. But what I don't understand, the story that I know, and you obviously correct me with any of this, but it wasn't just that single agent. There were other agents ready to pounce that night, weren't there?
Yeah, the guys actually, so the robbers and the agents take the same train from Chicago to here. And it's like, I forget, like one of them is in the front car, one of them's in the back car, like one group. And then they get here, the robbers immediately like check into a hotel and go to sleep. The agents set up all around the tomb, but even at that, even though they're set up around the tomb, they still don't like it all gets messed up. There's like they're supposed to get a signal from the guy who's flipped, but he doesn't deliver the signal right away. I think because the robbers make him hold stuff so his hands aren't free. Anyway, eventually, they spring it on them. They figure out the guys are in there. They drop all their equipment, which is how I was telling you, we have all their equipment in our collection. Museum, yeah, it's on display right now, some of it. They drop all their equipment and then they get away. Like it takes a few days before they end up catching them. Like it's all a boondoggle, every part of the story.
And I assume they died in prison or they spent a long time there until they came up with another master plan. Let's kidnap Millard Fillmore and bury him on a beach.
Yeah, Fillmore doesn't bring as much money as Lincoln, right?
It's a lower price tag. And not to stay on the grim train here, but you mentioned the Secret Service, and I've seen this as a fact. And I don't know if you know this: the internet's never wrong, and the internet's never false. But I'm told that the Secret Service was a bill signed into law by the president on or about the day he was assassinated.
Ooh, I don't know if I can.
That's
vote
your homework.
Yeah, that's my homework. I don't know about that. I do know
But they weren't tasked with protecting the president at that point. It's just an interesting tie by
They're
tie.
like I said, they end up wrapped up. So this counterfeiting story is this huge story in the late 19th century. It's like kind of the roots. Chicago has this reputation.
We've heard.
Yeah, and all the roots of kind of organized crime in Chicago go back to this counterfeiting stuff, and that Secret Service is combating that. No, the one thing I can say about Lincoln that's like that is the train car that ends up carrying him from his body from Washington to here was the first Air Force One. It was built to be his luxury car that he would ride around in his second term.
How about that?
Ends up being what they carry his coffin around in. So.
And now, by the way, there's a cool piece of wall art, if you will, here, which shows the actual path that the funeral train took to cover as much of the country as possible and kind of retrace some of the route of Lincoln, right?
Yeah.
In other words, how he got to Washington, they sent him in reverse.
It's almost exactly the same. And this is how I can segue into music, because there was an enormous, one of the things about Lincoln, about the way the country mourned Lincoln that, few people know, is this enormous amount of music these people published. Every single songwriter in America wrote a mourning Lincoln song, and some of it's to cash in, but it's just this. There's way more songs written about Lincoln in the year after he dies than
prior to that,
than during his life. Yeah. So music.
John Prine, God rest his soul. I was listening the whole way down. How'd you get into the Illinois music scene? How'd you tie that all together? I know you studied it, but how'd you tie it all together to this?
Well, this exhibit, we always had this idea here that, Illinois got this remarkable music story, that Illinois is really central to the history of American music and really the whole world, right? That Illinois... and it doesn't get enough credit for it, and mostly this is a Chicago story, but that Chicago, especially in the early 20th century, the blues and jazz music that's recorded in Chicago and early rock ends up influencing, music around the entire world. So we wanted to get a exhibit together that explored, the full breadth of music.
Who of all the huge names that we've all talked about, who's the most influential, you think, in the modern music scene?
Yeah, probably Muddy Waters. I think you don't have Muddy Waters. And Chuck Berry, although Chuck Berry is living in Missouri, he's a St. Louis guy, but he's recording in Chicago. But I think, you get without Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry recording at Chess, you don't get the British Invasion, You don't
get all of it.
No,
the dominoes wouldn't have fallen the same way.
Exactly. And Illinois is the epicenter for that. And I don't think many people know that, but even here in Illinois.
Was the scene there first, or did they make the scene? Did they come to Chicago because that's where you would go?
That's for Lance.
Well,
now you're taking Lance's act when Lance comes in to talk about the exhibit.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because you know the answer, but you have to pretend you don't. Otherwise, we'll have to do a lot of editing.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, yeah. It's a migration. It's about the Great Migration, right? That they
right. And the music moved north because listen, no.
Okay.
All right. So here's the thing that I do want to discuss with you in relation, because I don't want it to all be Lincoln was killed and then somebody tried to steal his body.
Yeah.
He was the greatest president that ever lived, and there is absolutely no reason for him to have become that as a man. The way he grew up, all the things that happened to him, probably suffered from clinical depression, had a troubled marriage, lost a child before he went to the White House, I think. All of these horrible things. There's nothing that adds up to, well, let's throw the Civil War at him and see if he can handle that.
So, I've been kind of in the orbit of this place now for almost 12 years. And so I've obviously thought about Lincoln in that time. And the thing that I like to remind people about Lincoln, which I think fits with what you're talking about, what's the thing about Lincoln, right, is... Lincoln had less than 1 year of actual schooling. Lincoln, and it's just these, and Lincoln describes that schooling himself as he uses one word. He says defective. So these are these country school teachers that come around and they send their kids for a little while.
Yeah.
He never goes to law school. He passes the bar on his own. And so what's the deal there, right? And I think Lincoln, today we would call Lincoln gifted, right? As a kid, he's reading, he's able to memorize all this stuff. He teaches himself, he may even teach himself to read. He certainly teaches himself math. He reads all these like classic works. Then as he gets older, he teaches himself to be a lawyer. He teaches himself to be a surveyor. Lincoln has this incredible capacity for self-improvement.
And a curiosity.
And he wants self-improvement. Lincoln is born into a farming family. That's not the life Lincoln wants. Lincoln wants to escape that life and become a middle-class professional. And he basically does that entirely on his own. And what for me is admirable about Lincoln is that teaches Lincoln that he's never perfect, right? It teaches Lincoln that there's always something more to learn, right? Lincoln always knows what he doesn't know. And so for his entire life, you can see this capacity for growth with Abraham Lincoln. And it goes right through the Civil War. When Lincoln gets to Washington, Lincoln served in the Black Hawk War in a militia. He doesn't fight at all. He jokes later that he only fought mosquitoes. So he's got no military experience. He's gonna supervise the largest war still ever fought in the North American continent, right? So what does he do? He goes to the Library of Congress and he checks out books on warfare. Lincoln always has this, I got to learn, and he's capable of learning, and he's always capable of growing. And I think that's a really important lesson from Lincoln. We think of Lincoln as great, but Lincoln didn't think of himself as great. Lincoln was always striving to make himself better and to tackle any kind of challenge that faced him.
But Pat, you can back me up on this. It takes a tremendous ego and self-confidence to think you could be president and to push your way into politics, to lose as he did, Lincoln did, and to continue to push forward. So I know you're not a psychologist, but it's interesting, I think, to marry those two ideas together. A guy that should have been filled with self-doubt and self-esteem problems, who somehow has the confidence, a belief in himself or ego to push his way to where he went.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say Lincoln had self-esteem problems, at least later in life. I think Lincoln just was always capable of learning, and Lincoln was always capable of growing, but he has this, so he's got humility there, right? He knows he might not be the smartest person in the room, but he's got this tremendous ambition. That's what people around him say, is that Lincoln has this ambition. He wants to get into politics. I mean, when Lincoln sets out on his own, when they come to Illinois, and he moves to New Salem, he's only there for a year before he runs for office. I mean, that's a pretty ambitious guy, right? And he loses, runs again in 2 years, and wins. Sure. Right?
You know the thing, and a lot of people have seen the Gettysburg Address. It's at his memorial, and if you read that, every word has meaning. Was that? Where did he develop that strength? Just from reading it? Because the writing, I know he wrote that speech on the train way up, right? I mean, it was not a...
That's a myth. I mean, we think he took a lot more time to write it. He even was revising it right up until when he gave it. And I'll get another plug in, right? There's 5 copies of the Gettysburg Address in Lincoln's hand that are still survive out there in the world, and we have one of them here. That's our crown jewel of our collection. And the anniversary's coming up on November 19th of when he delivered it, and it's going to go on display that day and stay out for about 2 weeks. So.
And if people are missing a moment here, that's the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, pretty much.
So just every word you read it, and you go, wow, this guy, his brain must have been on fire. Well, every word has meaning.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing me back to that. I think Lincoln is undoubtedly the best writer we've ever had as president. Lincoln is just a remarkable writer. He's so good at conveying ideas in a way that anyone can understand. The Gettysburg Address isn't difficult to read. It's not real flowery language. And he writes a lot of his best speeches are really short. And part of that is because it's effective to get the idea across. The other thing about Lincoln to always remember, too, is he's living in a newspaper era. Right. So... the Gettysburg Address fits on one column of a newspaper, right? And it's him in one column.
He couldn't tweet it out?
He couldn't tweet it out, yeah. Although you could probably, it'd only be a short tweet thread.
You wouldn't believe how slow the internet was in 1860. yeah.
But he basically he tries to define what the Civil War is about in one newspaper column. I mean, it's a remarkable speech, and it deserves its reputation.
But the point that Pat brings up, though, he grew up with limited to no education. Yeah, he read. Yeah, he was constantly curious. I get all that. But that ability to write and that sense of language, I mean, that is secondary education to college education to the Ivy League level of to be able to put it down. Yeah. So my point, I guess, is beyond gifted. I don't think he's ever gotten credit to be an actual genetic genius.
Yeah, he's a
in some
genius.
way.
Yeah, I think he is. And I mean, you look at his writing. His writing improves over time, obviously.
But with a friggin' feather, Pat.
Yeah, but he's absorbing all these things he's reading. He's a big fan of Shakespeare. He's a big fan of Robert Burns's poetry. He reads the Bible. I mean, he's not a religious guy, but he reads the Bible. And you know, he's one of these people. He can just internalize all this stuff and then apply it to his own writing. And so by the time he's president, like, yeah, he's one of the best writers in America. It's like him and Mark Twain, right? And, you know, he's able to put that to use really effectively. Go ahead.
I mean, what, too, on the writing, but underestimated maybe as a politician. I mean, the Civil War amendments that he got done.
Yeah.
I mean, that was political genius to get. That was not going to happen without somebody like him there, right?
No, the 13th Amendment is, you know, we talk about the Emancipation Proclamation as his greatest achievement, and obviously it's a big deal, but it's really the 13th Amendment that kills chattel slavery in America. And, you know, this is what the Spielberg movie is about. I mean, Lincoln, you know, shepherds that through Congress extremely skillfully. And, you know, he doesn't live to see it get ratified at the end of that year. But, I mean, yeah, he's a tremendous politician.
That's 100 years before the Voting Civil Rights Act. I mean, this is not an easy time to do it, I would imagine.
No, they know, you know, they know that the war's probably winding down in early 1865, and Lincoln is worried that the Emancipation Proclamation is just a presidential proclamation. It's not, you know, no law passed or anything, so the Supreme Court could potentially shoot it down. So he needs a constitutional amendment to permanently make sure slavery is gone. And he and the Republicans, and, you know, they're able to, you know, it becomes this kind of real maneuvering to get enough votes to get it through. And it's a real political achievement. And Lincoln does that throughout his career. He's a very good political operator. He has this web of connections here in Illinois that he builds.
Well, and Doris Kearns Goodwin has a great book on Team of Rivals.
Yeah.
Where she highlights his ability to play the political game.
Yeah.
It comes out in the Spielberg movie, but it's a great book to read about it, I think.
Yeah.
What about, too, speaking of those connections, I grew up in Bloomington, Daily Pantograph, Jesse Felt, David Davis, all his Illinois connections ended up having a huge influence on him and where they ended up.
And that comes from his legal career. You know, one of the things Lincoln does is he rides the circuit, right? He leaves Springfield and he goes to all these other places along the 8th Circuit. And
when explain what that means, riding the circuit, why that was important.
Yeah, so basically back then, there were these different circuit courts where lawyers would go to be available for people who didn't have their own lawyers, and Lincoln loved to do that, and so he would be one of these people. So every year he would go out and he would spend a few months of the year riding around and going to these different courthouses. And I mean, that was so obviously it was a cool thing he did, and it helped people. It helped him hone his legal skills. But the other thing it did was it let him meet all these other lawyers, and you know, same as today, a lot of politicians are lawyers, and so that's how he makes this network that he ends up building and that he's able to use throughout his legal career. And these guys are originally Whigs, a lot of them then become Republicans, and it's a lot of those guys who are able to get him the nomination in 1860.
But he did okay financially as a lawyer, didn't he?
Oh, he was a great lawyer. Yeah, he's Lincoln. You know, there's kind of a tradition that Lincoln was just a corporate lawyer or whatever. Lincoln practiced all kinds of law, but he was a very successful lawyer. He was one of the most respected lawyers in Illinois. He's not one of these lawyer politicians who is a lawyer, but not really. Mostly they just got their law degree so they could run for office.
Most of them got their law degree for 3 more spring breaks.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, spring break in Daytona wasn't what it is now. To the assassination piece of this and all the horrible that followed. On that night, John Wilkes Booth, arguably the Brad Pitt of his generation?
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. That's a point I always try to emphasize to people, too, that he wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. This was an extremely famous person who shot the president. Yeah.
So everybody knows him. Women love him. Men want to have a beer with him.
It's like Steve Cochran.
Yeah, a lot like me. So he has no problem getting access anywhere. People want to be around him. Oh, doors could be open and all that. But I've always heard this story that the one policeman, such as it were, who was assigned to protect Lincoln on that night, was a drunk and had left his post to go across the street. Is that true?
That's true. There is a guy assigned to protect the president, and he's in a bar when Booth shows up. That's a true story. But it's like you said. I mean, nobody suspects Booth. I mean, Booth has gone a little cuckoo during the Civil War. He's radically pro-Confederate. But I mean, he's in a theater. Like, you know, if you're in a theater and a famous actor shows up, of course you're going to let him in. Oh, it's just John. He's hanging out, right? And, you know, he's able to kind of move around that place and get into Lincoln's box. I'm always careful I don't say booth because it's a you know, and you know, no one thinks anything of it, you know, even if they thought he was a little weird, they don't think he's going to shoot the president, right?
What about Mary Surratt? Wrongly hanged or correct?
You know, that we've been arguing about that for so long. I don't know. That's a toughie. I mean, she has these people meeting in her house, so I mean, she's got to kind of know what's going on, right? But I don't know. There's so many of these things that we've been arguing about forever, but
well, Dr. Mudd was related to Congressman Ewing. Remember that?
And Roger Mudd.
We have Mudd's pardon in this collection, by the way. We had it on display.
Who pardoned him?
Andrew Johnson ends up pardoning him. You know, it's weird. That's the other thing.
I didn't know Johnson did. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So no, that's all a weird story. We've got a piece of the rope that hangs one of the guys. I mean, there's all this. The assassination stuff is all real kind of grim, and we have pieces of the dress that the actress wore that night when she cradled Laura Keene.
I missed that yesterday.
It's on display right now, but when she cradled Lincoln's head
across the street.
No, she goes up to the box because she says, "Oh, the president needs water." So she runs up there with some water and she cradles his head in her dress, and it gets blood on it. And she herself donates that piece of the dress to the tomb. She still tours with the same play, Our American Cousin. She comes here to Springfield with the same play like the next year, and she gives a piece of her dress to she donates a piece of her dress, and it ends up in our collection.
The conspiracy theories that exist for Kennedy and others don't seem to apply in the Lincoln assassination as much, or have I missed something?
Oh, there's plenty of conspiracy theories out there about Lincoln. You know, that it was the Jesuits who killed him, or that Booth was operating. I mean, at the time, the conspiracy theory was that Booth was operating with the backing of the Confederate government, that Jefferson Davis was ultimately behind it. And so they had their own conspiracy theories at the time too.
But there was no Warren report that followed, right?
Well, there was a massive manhunt. There was a trial. I mean, they catch these conspirators.
They catch Booth in the barn.
They shoot Booth in the barn. Yeah.
Right.
And then they hang. So it's kind of case closed at that point. Yeah. But the nation is essentially obsessed with it. And during that time, but until they catch them, I mean, the nation is basically under martial law. I mean, the entire federal government focuses on catching these guys.
So from a historian sitting around arguing over this standpoint, does it come up that if those assassins had not been taken out the way they were so quickly or hung, that there was more to find out about it and maybe some of the conspirators got away?
Well, some of them don't get hanged or whatever, but I do think it's just Booth and a crew of his dudes. Yeah, of knuckleheads who, you know, and none of them, you know, he's supposed to take out, I mean, the conspiracy angle,
take them all out.
They were supposed to take out the entire, you know, basically, it was Lincoln, Johnson, Seward, and Grant were all supposed to die that night.
Well, and 3 of the 4 were attacked, right?
Only Seward is the only other one who gets attacked. One of them gets into Seward's bedroom, and he
lying was sickly and old, and wasn't he stabbed multiple times?
They stabbed him, yeah.
And Grant was down at the bar in the Willard, the round bar.
Grant was supposed to be in the box, so Booth was going to kill them both. And then Grant ends up passing, and he's actually on a train when he finds out he's leaving town. But they were going to kill both of them at Ford's Theater.
You ever play the game mentally of if he hadn't, what would the country look like today?
Well, I'll say this: it's the number one question I get asked here, and you know, it's a tough one to answer because we really don't know. I mean, I think the interesting thing to think about is, you know, it's almost, you know, the aftermath of the war in a lot of ways is almost more difficult politically to navigate than the war itself. And would Lincoln's reputation have survived a second term trying to navigate, you know, how to bring the country back together?
But arguably, given who took over, the reforms he wanted more likely would have been done, right?
Oh, sure. The one thing I tell people is we don't really know what Lincoln... My short answer to that question is we don't know what Lincoln would have done, but it surely would have been better than what Andrew Johnson did.
Well, Johnson, not just following that, because who wants to follow that act, but Johnson historically is far and away one of the worst people to ever occupy the office.
He's usually voted near the bottom or at the bottom. Yeah, I mean, he's the first president to be impeached, and he basically tries to reverse any gains being made by African Americans in the South. I mean, he's not a good dude.
That's what got him impeached. It was
because the Republicans in Congress want to pass all this stuff, and he keeps vetoing it, and so they eventually.
He was a Tennessee Democrat, right? Where was he from? Tennessee.
He's from Tennessee. He's the one. He's the one senator from a Confederate state who doesn't leave when the Confederacy breaks away, and that's how he ends up becoming a Union hero. He's the military governor of Tennessee during the war.
I want you to talk about a couple of before we let you go. A couple of things here that you really want people to see, but before we do that, what is your favorite thing about Lincoln? There's got to be something. Go full history nerd on me, and just tell me, of all the things I've learned through the years, this is the coolest thing.
Like you want like a little factoid?
Well, it doesn't have to be a factoid, but something that you don't think most people know that means something to.
Well, we've kind of already talked about it, which is that Lincoln is such a good writer. I think another thing I'll say about Lincoln that we didn't say earlier that I love about Lincoln is Lincoln was hilarious. We don't think of Lincoln, right? He's a marble man to us now, right? No, Lincoln was apparently hilarious. One of the reasons these fellow politicians or whatever loved to hang out with him is that he would tell these goofy stories, he would tell these off-color jokes, and people just loved to hang out with Abraham Lincoln because he was so funny.
A couple of moments of that in the Spielberg film. Do we know if those are factual or close to factual?
Oh yeah, that story he tells about the outhouse and George Washington's he loved that joke. He would tell that joke. There was a lot of, he apparently would work a lot dirtier than that too, but none of those jokes survive. But Lincoln was apparently he wasn't, we think of Lincoln as like a boring kind of, like you say, he's a genius, so we think of him as kind of a stodgy guy. Lincoln was apparently a cool guy.
How great would a Lincoln dirty joke book be?
Right.
But it's interesting because in my view, the most successful leaders and politicians do have a sense of humor. And ability to laugh at themselves more than anything.
Well, you better.
Yeah, you need that. If you're going to get elected, you need to be a likable guy, right? And you need to have friends. And Lincoln had that.
The last surviving relative of Lincoln is one of the things I learned about here, and I believe it was his great-granddaughter who lived into the 70s.
His grandson was the last one to go, but yes, he has a great-granddaughter who also passed away in the 70s.
Particular great-granddaughter had no interest in being tied to the history of all of it, I guess.
No, she is her name is Peggy. She's a fascinating one. Yeah, we've got some stuff of hers on display right now, and she just likes to hang out at the mansion that Lincoln's son builds, and she hangs out with animals. She lets raccoons in the house, and she learned how to fly a plane and drive a car. She has no interest. Anytime everyone wants to ask her about her famous great grandfather, she's like, meh.
All right, we talked about a few things here.
I'd like to have a bumble date with Lincoln's great grandfather. Tell me about yourself. Well, Abraham Lincoln was my great grandpa,
and none of them have kids, so there's no Lincolns left. Yeah, that generation's the last.
Well,
one.
The law firm too, Lincoln Bisham, the Chicago law firm, that was the last. Did the son go there?
Yeah, Robert practices law in Chicago for a while, and then he ends up going on to bigger things. But yeah, that's the last one of them to practice law. The one thing I'll say, again, I keep coming back to the collection though, is the last Lincoln, Robert Todd Lincoln Beckwith, donates a bunch of their stuff to us. So a huge chunk of our collection is stuff that came from the last Lincolns.
When did the son die?
He dies in the early 80s. I can't remember the exact year.
Wow.
He donates all his stuff to us between 1976 and 1978.
Is that right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, a bunch of it.
It's just amazing in Central Illinois, all this world history. I mean, this guy was got to be one of the top 5 in world history too, right?
It's funny. Like I said, I'm not from here. And so one of the things, sometimes they send me out to classrooms and stuff here, and I talk to kids, and they all take if you're from here, you take Lincoln for granted. He's just this guy, right? So that's the thing I always try to instill in people is, who are in Springfield, no, Lincoln's a huge deal.
Yeah.
He's the most famous American who ever lived, and probably the most respected American who ever lived.
Sure.
And, that's a big deal.
So the Lincoln copy from his own hand, the Gettysburg Address, will be back on display?
Yeah, it'll be on display starting November 19th. I can't remember off the top of my head what day it's on. Lance will know.
Hey, I got some buddies that love to see that. Can I take it home for the weekend?
Sure. No question. No. And one of the coolest things, I want to leave on a high note here, and one of the coolest things that seems to be reiterated and reinforced whenever you do any digging into it, and you can certainly break my heart here, was he loved being a dad, and he let his kids run roughshod over anything they wanted, right? There's a couple of great pieces here that demonstrate that.
Yeah, no, that's true. He loved being a dad. He loved children. They would remember that, people would remember that he would get down to eye level with kids. I do that with my own kid, and I do it because but I do it in part because I know it's what Lincoln did. Right. Yes, a lot of people thought he was too permissive of his kids. I don't know about that. I think it was more just he and Mary were very progressive parents. This is the mid-19th century is a time when the kind of idea of nurturing your kids and like making your kids into little people rather than just having them be farmhands was kind of a new idea. So I think that some people saw that and were like, oh, the Lincolns are being too easy on their kids. So
that whole nurturing thing skips our generation too.
Yeah, I didn't get any juice boxes or participation trophies.
Pat and I were talking about it. We're the first generation of dads to ruin our children. So.
Your arm's broken, just put some tape on it.
Yeah. I believe walk it off.
Walk it off. Here's a salt tablet. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you'll love the job. I'm a little jealous that you have it. Sure. I would be really bad at it. It's Christian McWhirter. Is there a great place to follow Lincoln history that's tied to what you do here?
Well, follow us. The Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum has a huge presence on social media. So almost whatever platform you're on, find us and follow us. And we're always offering cool stuff. And we do a lot of programming online. I work with Joe Crane to do stuff on Lincoln and the Civil War and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, tune in.
World famous Joe Crane.
The world famous Joe Crane. We all love Joe Crane.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Christian, it's a pleasure.
This was fun, guys. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming over to do this weekend. We continue live from the Lincoln Museum and the State of Sound exhibit. We'll hear about that coming up on Live from My Office. As you know, if you listen to Live from My Office, and thank you if you do, wherever you do, subscribe, rate, and review, download it for a friend, and catch up on all the old episodes over the holidays. There will be a test. But I'm glad you're here, and I appreciate your support. We always plug a charity on each episode. The charitable cause this time, for my money, is the Lincoln Museum. This fabulous place is about not just the past, but the future as well. And they are literally continually on the search for items of interest for the museum itself. There's a very specific thing they look for, authenticity, obviously, but you can check out in the show notes the direct link to the donation page at the Lincoln Museum for material, documents, letters, photos. How cool would that be if you've got those? What I'm thinking here is everybody's got a great-grandmother or a great-grandfather who maybe been a hoarder, and you go through their stuff and you find amazing things. Those are the kind of things where there has to be, since Lincoln's entire adult life was spent in, around, and about Illinois, there's got to be a lot of stuff out there that the Lincoln Museum doesn't even have yet. So consider a search, or maybe you already have something and you wanted to know how to contact them. It is in the show notes, as are links to all the things we've discussed on this episode. Next Wednesday the 17th, on episode 2, live from the Lincoln Museum, we're going to have an in-depth discussion of the State of Sound exhibit. Again, it's only running and up at the museum through January 23rd. It's an amazing collection of music that has come from Illinois. I believe it's 13 different genres on display. So do get down to see the museum and the library, and hopefully before January 23rd so you can see the museum. And congratulations to my friend Dave Hoekstra as well. Hoekstra wrote the text for the museum. Somehow he managed to keep my name out of the radio section. Oh, don't worry. I'll take it up with him. But thank you for listening. I want to thank again my friend Joe Crane and everybody involved with the Lincoln Museum and all the great work they do every day. On this show, of course, we had Amy Beadle, one of the great Pat Brady. You heard Joe Crane as well, and you heard Christian McWhirter. Next time around, one of the guests will be General Borling, who last week when we were down there was about to get a very special Lincoln honor himself, and someone you may not know, but who is a historian in his own right, a friend of Pat Brady's. Actually, Pat was the neighbor kid, and this guy was the neighbor dad It's a long story. We'll get into it. But next week, we'll bring you back to the Lincoln Museum for another episode. It's Live from my office, live at the Lincoln Museum, part 2, coming up Wednesday, the 17th. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Live from my office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.